All right, folks, this week we are going to continue our work with square roots. Let's take just a minute to review what we did last week. So far, one of the things that you have learned how to do is how to multiply square roots. So we have seen problems like 5 square roots of 2 times 7 square roots of 12. Now, to do that multiplication problem, we know that the first thing we do is we do the outside times the outside. 5 times 7 is 35. And then we also do the inside times the inside. 2 times 12 is 24, so we end up with 35 square roots of 24. So outside times outside, inside times inside. And now that we have this answer, we want to simplify that answer. So to simplify our answer, we take the square root of 24. And we find two numbers that will multiply to give us 24. And one of those numbers needs to be the biggest perfect square that will go into 24. The biggest perfect square that will go into 24 is 4. So we're going to make that the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. All right, simplifying a little more, we know that the square root of 4 is 2. So this becomes 35 times 2 times the square root of 6. And in the end, 35 times 2 is 70, so we end up with 70 square roots of 6 as our answer. So that is one thing that we know how to do. We multiply. Outside times outside, inside times inside, and then we simplify our answer. All right, and then towards the end of last week, we learned how to add and subtract square roots. And one of the things that we learned and that we discussed is the fact that adding and subtracting square roots, those operations are pickier than multiplying. Because to add and subtract square roots, we must have like terms. So if I give you something like 5 square roots of 12, plus 3 square roots of 75. That is an addition problem that we are not going to be able to do the way that it's written. These two are not like terms because this one ends in the square root of 12 while this one ends in the square root of 75. So what we learned we had to do on adding and subtracting is you have to simplify your square roots first to see which ones are like terms and then add or subtract those that are like terms. So what we would do here is we would start with 5 square roots of 12 and we would simplify that. So we would want to find two numbers that will multiply to give us 12, with one of those being a perfect square. So that would be 4 times 3. And then over here, same thing. We would want to find two numbers that multiply to give us 75, with one of those being a perfect square. 25 times 3 is the way we would go there. All right, continuing on, this would give us 5 times 2 times the square root of 3 plus 3 times 5 times the square root of 3. So we end up with 10 square roots of 3 plus 15 square roots of 3. Now we can see, once that simplifying is done, that these are indeed like terms, and we can add them together. So we would add 10 plus 15 and get 25 square roots of 3. Now, you will be having a quiz Thursday on these two skills. Multiplying square roots, adding and subtracting square roots. The new stuff that we're going to work on today will not be included on that quiz. All right, so I've reviewed these two skills with you because we're going to use both of these, the multiplying and the adding and subtracting, in the problems that we are going to be tackling today. Today what we're going to be looking at is binomial square root problems. So binomial square root problems. Now, binomial is not a new word to us. We know that when we see the word binomial, binomial indicates that there are going to be two terms. And so let me take you back in time for just a minute because it will connect with what we're getting ready to do today. You all will remember that back when we were in our polynomials chapter, we learned to multiply binomials together. So we learned to do problems like 3x plus 2 times 5x plus 3. Now we do that by first distributing. So we start out with our 3x and we distribute it over here. So we know we do 3x times 5x, which would give us 15x squared. Then we also do 3x times 3, which would give us 9x. So notice that 3x has been distributed to both of these terms over here. Now we'll do the same thing with this positive 2. So we'll do positive 2 times 5x, which would be a positive 10x. And then positive 2 times 3 would be a positive 6. So notice the first step is to do the multiplying. And we multiply by distributing. Now that we've got the multiplying all done and we're looking at this expression, now we would add and subtract the like terms. So we can see that we have a positive 9x and a positive 10x that are like terms that we can combine, and we would get 15x squared plus 19x plus 6 as our final answer. So let me point out on this binomial problem what we did. We multiplied first by distributing. And then after the multiplying was done, then we did the adding and the subtracting. Now, I'm bringing that up because today, when we talk about binomial square root problems, here's what we're discussing. Let's say we've got 3 square roots of 2 plus 2 times 5 square roots of 2 plus 3. Now, I want you to take a look at these two problems side by side. They're basically the same problem. The only thing that I did is in this problem over here where I had my x's, I've now come over here and I've made those square roots. Square root of 2 for both of those. So this is a binomial square root problem. And I've shown you a binomial problem from before because there is a direct connection in how these two are going to work. So to do this problem, the first thing we are going to do is we are going to multiply. And we're going to multiply by distributing. Both of these terms over here are going to be distributed over here just like we did in this problem on the left. Now, the big thing we have to remember is we are multiplying square roots now. So that is going to be outside times outside and inside times inside. So this problem is going to be worked the same way that the binomial problems were before, but we're going to have to remember that now that we're using square roots, it's outside times outside, inside times inside. All right, so here we go. So first, you're going to do 3 square roots of 2 times 5 square roots of 2. Outside times outside is 15. Inside times inside is 4. So that's going to be 15 square roots of 4. All right, now you're going to do 3 square roots of 2 times 3. Outside times outside is 9. Inside times inside is still going to be a 2. This expression, 3 square roots of 2 had an inside number of 2. This 3 over here that we're multiplying by doesn't have an inside number, so that 2 doesn't change. All right, so next up we'll distribute this 2. 2 times 5 square roots of 2. Outside times outside is 10. Inside times inside is still going to be a 2. Same reason there. The 2 doesn't have an inside number, the 5 square roots of 2 does. And then finally 2 times 3, 6. So we still distribute both terms from the first set of parentheses to both terms in the second set of parentheses. But we've got to keep in mind that now that we're working with square roots, it is outside times outside, inside times inside every single time. All right, now the multiplying is over. We need to go through here and see if any of these square roots will simplify. All right, so taking a look at our first one here, we have 15 square roots of 4. 4 is a perfect square, so we can simplify this. This is going to be 15 times 2. 15 times 2, which is 30. So that 15 square roots of 4 becomes 30 because the square root of 4 is just a 2. These two both have a square root of 2. The only way that I can get a 2 is 1 times 2. So I'm not going to be able to simplify those. So this is going to be plus 9 square roots of 2 plus 10 square roots of 2 plus 6. So neither one of these square roots will simplify at all. All right, and now we can do our adding and subtracting. So we're going to combine the like terms. So when I look at this, I can do the 30 plus the 6. 30 plus 6 is 36. And I can also do the 9 square roots of 2 plus 10 square roots of 2, which would be 19 square roots of 2. So 36 plus 19 square roots of 2 would be my final answer. So I want you to notice what we did here. We multiplied first, remembering to do outside times outside, inside times inside. Then we took this answer we got and looked at each of the square roots to see if we could simplify. We simplified the ones that we could, because remember, if we're going to add and subtract, we simplify first to see which terms are like terms, and then we added up the like terms and got our final answer. So you do the multiplying first, the adding and subtracting last. But notice the similarity with the polynomials that we did earlier. All right, let's try another one. Let's try 8 square roots of 3 minus 4 times 5 square roots of 3 plus 2. All right, so we'll start with the multiplying part of this. Remember, when you multiply, it is outside times outside, inside times inside. So first, we're going to do 8 square roots of 3 times 5 square roots of 3. Outside times outside is 40. Inside times inside is 9. So we get 40 square roots of 9. All right, next up we will do 8 square roots of 3 times 2. Outside times outside is 16. Inside times inside, still going to be 3 because that 2 doesn't have an inside number. So that 3 is going to stay the same. 16 square roots of 3. All right, now we're going to distribute our negative 4. So negative 4 times 5 square roots of 3. Outside times outside is a negative 20. Inside times inside, we're still going to have a 3. And then finally, negative 4 times positive 2 is just a negative 8. So there's my multiplication step. Outside times outside, inside times inside, and that's all done. All right, so now, before I do my adding and subtracting, I'm going to go through and look at the 3 terms that have a square root to see if there's any simplifying I can do. The square root of 9. 9 is a perfect square, so I know what that is. This is 40 times 3. 40 times 3 is 120. So that can be simplified. Square root of 3, only way to get that is 1 times 3. So I'm not going to be simplifying those. So I have plus 16 square roots of 3 minus 20 square roots of 3 minus 8. So I've simplified a little bit. And now I will combine my like terms. So I'll do 120 minus 8. Those are like terms. That would give me 112. And then I will do 16 square roots of 3 minus 20 square roots of 3, which is negative 4 square roots of 3. And there's my answer. So you are using both things that we learned how to do last week. You're multiplying square roots first, and then adding and subtracting at the end. And it's all a very similar process to multiplying binomials from earlier in the semester. All right, let's do this one next. Let's do 3 square roots of 5 plus 2 times 3 square roots of 5 minus 2. All right, let's multiply first. So 3 square roots of 5 times 3 square roots of 5. Outside times outside is 9. Inside times inside is 25. 3 square roots of 5 times a negative 2. Outside times outside is a negative 6. Inside times inside is 5. Now let's distribute our 2. 2 times 3 square roots of 5. Outside times outside is a positive 6. Inside times inside is 5. And then finally 2 times a negative 2 is a negative 4. Multiplying is all done. All right, now look at square roots to see if there's any simplifying to do. We see a perfect square right here. The square root of 25 is 5, so this is really just 9 times 5, which is 45. The other 2 square roots are both square roots of 5. The only way to get that is 1 times 5, which won't help. So I'm just going to bring those down, bring the rest of the problem down as a matter of fact. And now we can do our adding and subtracting. Like terms here, we can do 45 minus 5. That's going to be 41. And then notice that you have a negative 6 square roots of 5 plus 6 square roots of 5. Those are like terms. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. So these are going to cancel each other out. The negative 6 square roots of 5 and the positive 6 square roots of 5 are going to cancel each other out. So 41 will be your final answer. Okay, I want to show you one last problem. Let's go with 7 minus 2 square roots of 3 squared. Now, I want to show you this problem because it looks different from the other 3 examples that we've done. You don't have, or it doesn't appear that you have, 2 binomials being multiplied together. But what I want you to remember here is that when you square something, that means that you are going to multiply it times itself. An exponent is a repeated multiplication. So on this problem, the first thing you need to do is rewrite it as 7 minus 2 square roots of 3 times itself. Because that's what squaring means, is to take that something and multiply times itself. So this is how we would want to write that problem before we actually attempt to work it. So now let's multiply. So we'll start with the 7 and distribute. 7 times 7 is 49. Then we're going to do 7 times negative 2 square roots of 3. Outside times outside would be a negative 14. Inside times inside is 3. So negative 14 square roots of 3. Now we'll take the second term, negative 2 square roots of 3, and distribute. So negative 2 square roots of 3 times 7. Outside times outside is negative 14. Inside times inside, 3. And then finally, we'll do negative 2 square roots of 3 times negative 2 square roots of 3. Outside times outside is positive 4. Inside times inside is 9. So distribute, just like you always have. And remember that when you multiply the outsides and the insides. All right, now, let's go through this answer to see if any of our square roots will simplify. Our square root of 3's, only way to get those is 1 times 3, so we're not simplifying there. So these first 3 terms are all staying the same. But out here on the end, 9 is a perfect square. So this is really just 4 times 3. So 4 times 3 is going to make that plus 12. And now that I've simplified, my last step is to see if I can actually do any of the adding or subtracting that I see. We're going to do 49 plus 12, which would be 61. And then we're going to do negative 14 square roots of 3 minus 14 square roots of 3. Notice both of those are negative. They are not going to cancel out. Negative 14 minus 14 is a negative 28 square roots of 3. And right there is your final answer. So do the multiplying first. Outside times outside, inside times inside. And then simplify and combine any like terms that you see. All right, so don't forget Quiz Thursday. If anything about today's lesson doesn't make sense or you don't see where my numbers came from, then feel free to email me here at school, and I will definitely get back to you. All right, let me know if there's anything I can help with.